Shalom. Just doing a little bit of research here, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Yeah, um, I saw this article on a app called Academia, and the article said Queen Esther, wife of Xerxes, chronological, historical, and archaeological evidence. This had been something I was looking for a while, so the Most High sent it. All praises. This is a purportedly the head of a statue of Queen Esther. Notice the nose is broken off, as is often the case um, with iconoclasm, where they were trying to remove all blackness from history. Okay, the so-called white man, who is the biblical Edomite, did his best to remove the black image, um, the so-called black image, which is actually the Israelite image. He tried to remove it from all positive and powerful space. So yeah, just reading this here, I'm gonna read it out loud, um, at least for a little bit, and kind of share this article with you guys and see what we can discover. Okay, so first and foremost, I never knew there was a statue, which, if this is indeed a statue, you notice the curly hair, all right, kinky hair, right, beautiful kinky hair there on that sister, small mouth, kind of roundish Negro nose, you know, look like a really fair sister. So anyway, let's get going. Queen Esther, wife of Xerxes. Historical and archaeological evidence. Jacket photograph, head of Queen Esther, is in lapis lazuli from Persepolis, 5th century BC. All right, it's in the National Museum of Iran. So one of the things I always wondered is, man, like, if I went to the east, could I easily find evidence of Queen Esther? And from this scholar here, um, the answer is yes. Right. So this is by Gerard Jertu. All right. Who is a PhD candidate. All right. So it says Queen Esther on the right, right here, in front of Atosa, Darius' wife and Xerxes' mother, seated on a throne, probably when she married Xerxes in 489 BCE. Museli de Louvre, Paris. Museli de Louvre, Paris. So this is in the museum in Paris, probably. Okay. This is really interesting here. The Book of Esther, fairy tale or history. Abstract. Very few Bible scholars believe now in the historicity of the Book of Esther. But what is really incomprehensible is that their conclusion is based only on the following prejudice. This story looks like a fairy tale, consequently, it is a fairy tale. You hear that? So their whole belief that Esther is not real is based on a prejudice, and the prejudice is that it looks like a fairy tale, so it is a fairy tale. There is no chronological investigation, despite the fact that chronology is the backbone of history. And there has been no historical research among archaeological witnesses, despite the fact that apart from ancient texts, there is no witness. Worse still, to establish the chronology, historians have blind faith in the Babylonian kings list, which are nevertheless false, reporting no usurpation, right? That means no overthrowing of kings, and no co-regency. Yeah, no, the king's list doesn't report any co-ruling. Additionally, in order to establish historical truth, they regularly quote the official propaganda of the time, which is very often misleading. It is yet it is easy to check in the tablets of Persepolis that Mordecai was an eminent royal scribe called Mardukah, who worked with Tatenai, the governor beyond the river, under the direction of Ushan, Ushtanu, the satrap of Babylon, during the years 17 to 32 of Darius. So they're saying it's easy to check the tablets of Persepolis and find Mordecai, but instead they refer to the official propaganda to tell you about Mordecai, which is dishonest. Similarly, the narrative of Herodotus regarding Amestris, a name meaning vigorous woman in Old Persian, Xerxes' unique wife and only queen known in Persia, corresponds in many ways to Esther, star, in Old Persian, despite the unfavorable and biased description of the Persian queen. So this Persian queen had an unfavorable and biased description. Yeah? Probably because she was black and didn't look like the rest of the Persians. Right? Okay. How to establish historical truth. What is truth? Pilate said to Yahushua in John 18:38, for historians, truth is what is truth? Pilate said to Yahushua in John 18:38. For historians, truth is based on two main pillars. One, an accurate chronology, Herodotus' principle, anchored on absolute dates. And two, reliable documents through CDD's principle, coming from critical editions. All right. To check the accuracy of the Book of Esther, unfortunately, historians prefer to refer to eminent experts rather than to the two previous pillars. That's interesting. So historians prefer to refer to eminent experts, people, rather than to establish the historical truth based on the pillars that they themselves set up. For example, Adelaide Berlin wrote an article, The Book of Esther and Ancient Storytelling, in which she explains that scholar so and so number one says this, but scholar so and so number two thinks that. However, scholar so and so number three believes this, and so on. And her conclusion is, my main point is that Esther typifies storytelling about Persia from the Persian period. It takes some of its motifs from biblical literature, and it partakes of many others from the broader literary world of its time, preserved for us most abundantly in the Greek writings. We should therefore use these Greek writings in connection with Esther for literary purposes, not for historical purposes. In a similar way, the Jerusalem Bible, official Bible translation of Catholicism, explains in its introduction to the Book of Esther, saying, the decree Xerxes agreed to sign for the extermination of Jews is hard to reconcile with the tolerant policy of Archimedes. It is even less likely that he authored the slaughter of his own people and left 75,000 Persians to be killed without resistance. According to the dates given by the narrative, the queen of Persia, wife of Xerxes, was to be named Amestris, and the great history leaves no room for Vashti or Esther. This amazing taking of liberty can only be explained if the authors wanted to do something other than a work of history. It is likely that they have used from real events, but one cannot determine what they were. Catholic bishops are even more incisive. The Book of Esther tells a story of the deliverance of the Jewish people. We are shown a Persian emperor, Ahasuerus, loosely based on Xerxes, 485 to 464 BC, who makes momentous decisions for trivial reasons, and his wicked minister Haman, who takes advantage of the king's compliance to pursue a personal vendetta. The book is a free composition, not a historical document. Its fictional character can be illustrated by many examples of literary motifs. There are many exaggerations and even sarcastic implausibilities. Cf. The effect of Vashti's disobedience in 1:17 to 18, and huge ironies, example in chapter 6, verse 6 and verse 10. The work is a composite of reversals, chapter 9, 1, in the lives of individuals. Some scholars, like William Shea, are more balanced. In summary, all five of More's major arguments against the historicity of Esther have been weighed here, two in detail and three more briefly. And they have been found wanting in greater or lesser degree. This does not prove Esther to be essentially historical, but it does open the door to that possibility to a greater extent. And future arguments against its historicity should be based upon more historical merit than these. Before one describes the book of Esther as a novella akin to 1001 Nights, as Moore has done, more attention should be given to the historical details in the book itself and in our sources from this period, fragmentary though they be. Pierre Bryant, a prominent historian, explains why official historians continue to propagate an official history resulting from king lists, even if they are obviously biased. So, what does this man say? What does Pierre Bryant say? Generations of historians have been asking the question, was Gormata really the usurper called Madas by Darius, or was he just an invention of Darius because he was anxious to conceal that it was really he who had overthrown Bardia, the true son of Cyrus? When, with good reason, the modern historian casts doubt on the reality of the execution of Bardia, the entire structure collapses like a house of cards. But it must also be remembered that nothing has been established with certainty at the present time, given the available evidence. The historian is reduced to arguing for probabilities and choosing the option that appears the least uncertain. To explore the problem, we must now entertain the hypothesis these days generally accepted of a deception devised by Darius himself. In his Newspeak, Professor Brand calls the truth hypothesis because if truth is used, his entire official history collapses like a house of cards. In contrast, if one uses an accurate chronology anchored on absolute dates and reliable documents coming from critical editions, truth is attainable. See Annex. The official reign of Darius from king lists below is quite different from his real reign from Babylonian dated contracts. Right? And we have this table here, right, showing his official reign based on the pillars of historicity, which you can go through because I'll put the link to this document in the description. Okay. I'm seeing this for the first time as well, and I don't want to kill too much time trying to figure it out. Let's keep reading. Based on the historical reconstruction, it is easy to see that Bardia was made co-regent of Cambyses II at the end of year 7, and thus that he was the legitimate king murdered by Darius I when Nebuchadnezzar III began to revolt. Official history collapses. In fact, if absolute dates are used, the whole currently official Persian history collapses. That's interesting. For some unexplained reason, the number of tablets decreases sharply after Darius' death. Probably because papyrus was used instead of clay tablets, which makes chronological reconstitution harder. Regarding the official reign of Xerxes coming from king's lists like the tablet BM 34576 and propagated by official historians, it is completely different from the one reconstructed from dated contracts. It is completely different from the one reconstructed from dated contracts. In addition, the following reconstruction is fully confirmed by the dating coming from the most reliable Greek historians like Thucydides and Herodotus. It is obvious that this chronology based on absolute dates, highlighted in blue, completely changes the interpretation of the events mentioned in the book of Esther. So let's see here. So the chronology based on absolute dates is highlighted in blue. Year 502 Darius. Historical event lunar eclipse 19 November 502 BC. Reference I'm a guest. 491. Let's see, 31 to 5 lunar eclipse, amalgamous, and so on and so forth. Right? 475. 0 to 21, Battle of Naxos, the last one during Xerxes' reign. Okay. So what does this tell us? Chronological checking of the book of Esther. Checking the chronology of the book of Esther is very difficult for the following reason. All the Persian archives were destroyed by fire, and the main indirect witness of that period comes from the Greek histories of Herodotus. Susa became part of the Persian Empire under Cyrus II in 539 BC. During the balance of the Achaemenian period, Susa functioned as one of the rotating capitals, a winter capital of the Achaemenian kings. Darius I built an extensive palace complex ca. 520 BCE, and Herodotus mentions Susa as being the capital of Darius' empire. Herodotus does not make any mention of Persepolis being a Persian capital. The palace complex, whose building continued under Darius' son Xerxes, was destroyed by a fire during the reign of Artaxerxes I, and then restored 50 years later by his grandson Artaxerxes II. According to Strabo, Alexander burnt up the palace at Persepolis to avenge the Greeks because the Persians had destroyed both temples and cities of the Greeks by fire and sword. Right? According to the book of Esther, annals of the kings of Media and Persia were written on books, scrolls, not clay tablets, recorded in Susa. This is from Esther 2:23, 6:1, and 10:2, and Ecbatana in Ezra 6:1-2. Thus, the main sources for the history of the Jews during the Neo-Babylonian Empire and the Persian Empire are the biblical books, supplemented by important cuneiform texts, Assyrian and Babylonian chronicles, the Yaukin tablets, Old Persian inscriptions, the Cyrus cylinder, the Murashau archive, and archaeological excavations in Palestine, Mesopotamia, and Persia. Some ostraka, seals, and bullae also offer specific corroborative evidence. Later Greek sources, such as Herodotus, Ctesias, Berosus, and Josephus, provide some further information. Nevertheless, the biblical texts remain the most important narrative sources. Contrary to what is frequently claimed, the Book of Esther is not an Oriental novel, like Once Upon a Time in a Very Faraway Land, but a precise record of numerous Persian events accurately dated, which are supposed to have taken place in the court of an Achaemenian king called in the Hebrew text Ahasuerus, Ahasuerus. Yeah? That's really what it says. Ahasuerus or Ahasuerus in probably modern, Hebrew. A name which has been plausibly interpreted as a transcription of the name Shu Sha Yar Shah, or Xerxes. For example, the first event mentioned is, this is what happened during the time of Xerxes, the Xerxes who ruled over 127 provinces stretching from India to Kush. At that time, the king Xerxes reigned from his royal throne in the citadel of Susa, And in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials. The military leaders of Persia and Media, the princes and the nobles of the provinces were present. For a full 180 days, he displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and glory of his majesty. When these days were over, the king gave a banquet lasting 7 days in the enclosed garden of the king's palace for all the people, from the least to the greatest, who were in the citadel of Susa. The reason for his huge banquet, dated in the spring 493 BCE, is not directly mentioned, but it have been given for celebrating a victory, because the first guests among the nobles and officials are the military leaders of Persia and Media. According to Greek historians, we know that there was the Ionian revolt from 499 to 493 BCE. Herodotus wrote, after wintering early 493 BCE around Miletus, the Persian fleet sailed forth next year, that's the spring of 493 BC, and captured the islands off the mainland with ease. Chios, Lesbos, Tenedos. They captured the Ionian cities on the mainland similarly, although they did not net the people, as it could not be done there. From Ionia, the fleet departed and captured all the places on the left of the entrance of the Hellespont. Several details in the narrative seem exaggerated but have been confirmed by archaeology. For example, the courtyard of the garden of the king's palace in Susa, Esther 1:5, and the outer courtyard of the king's house, Esther 6:4, could actually receive several thousand people, because according to excavations, these courtyards were large squares of 60 meters length each side. In addition, the description of the palace below is exact. Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace. Opposite the king's hall, the king was sitting on his royal throne inside the palace, opposite the entrance to the palace. Esther 5:1. And here it shows a map of, what the palace would look like. Right? The phrase Xerxes ruled 127 provinces, Medina, stretching from India to Kush, is considered an exaggeration, because the inscriptions of Darius mention at best 31 satrapies. Once more, the accusation is unfounded, because it is stipulated a little further. Then the king's secretaries were summoned on the 13th day of the first month, and an edict according to all that Haman commanded was written to the king's satraps and to the governors over all the provinces, and to the princes of all the peoples, to every province in its own script, and every people in its own language. Esther 3:12 and 8-9. Herodotus explains how the Persian administration was working. Having done these things in Persia, he, Darius, divided his empire into 20 dominions, which they called satrapies. And having divided his dominions into provinces, he appointed governors. Then he instructed each people to pay him tribute, consolidating neighboring peoples and distributing outlying peoples among different provinces, passing over those adjoining. This is Herodotus, book 3, verse 89. The history, 3 and verse 89. Herodotus gives a list of 20 satrapies comprising 65 provinces, but given that his numbering of satrapies is too low, 30 is more likely, and the description of some of them is obviously partial, explanations of the discrepancies are controversial, the whole number of provinces I'd rather to be around 120, 30 satrapies multiplied by 4 provinces in each satrapy. Another disputed point is the role of the satrap ruling the satrapy called those of the sea, Phoenicia, Palestine, and Cyprus. over the governor of one of his provinces, like the governor of Palestine, Judea. No Babylonian or Persian document indicates the number of provinces and satrapies. There are only the following: Darius the Mede, satrapy 3, provinces 120. References Daniel and the Nabonidus Chronicle. Darius the first, 23 satrapies, provinces, maybe 127, inscription, so and so. Xerxes, 31 satrapies, 127 provinces, inscription, so and so, Esther 1:1. And Artaxerxes, maybe 20 satrapies, maybe 65 provinces, and that's from Herodotus, uh, third chapter, 80, maybe page 89 to 92, not verse, as I said before. According to the Nabonidus Chronicle, Cyrus appointed Gubaru his governor over the local governments of Babylon. But this report is very misleading. See the article, Gubaru is Darius the Mede, because Ugbaru was actually co-regent of Cyrus and the new effective king of Babylon, who established governors over his kingdom. Given that Herodotus wrote his book around 450 BCE, he had to refer to the Persian data of this time. While initially we have in 538 BC, one satrapy equals one province, but quickly from 520 BCE, Darius made associations of 3 to 8 provinces in each satrapy. The term governor means merely ruler or chief. It was used as a typical title for governors of province. The presence of small and large provinces inside a satrapy induced a hierarchical relationship between chief governors and under governors. The word satrap, from the old Persian kashathrapan, was translated pihatu, governor, into Babylonian, and hegemon into Greek, but also transcripted satrapies, akashardarpan, into Aramaic. The title under governor was translated hyparchos, subordinate governor. However, even in official documents, the use of all these hierarchical titles was not always consistent. Another problem of transcription concerns names of kings. Since the biblical text uses only official names, which are throne names, for example, Darius II's birth name was Vahuka in Old Persian or Umakush in Babylonian, not birth names. Obviously, when a king had been considered later as a usurper, asterisk named, no official inscriptions used his throne name. What further complicates things is the fact that Persian rulers used Persian names, which were changed into cuneiform by Babylonian scribes, then translated into Aramaic and copied in Hebrew in the Bible by Jewish scribes, or Hebrew scribes, not Jewish, because we are the Jews, and finally transcribed into Greek. Thus, Xerxes is closer to Old Persian than Greek Ahasuerus. Here's some examples. Throne name, Evil Merodach. Birth name, Nabu Shuma Ukin. Right, and there's the reference. Darius the Mede, throne name. Birth name, Ubaris, perhaps. A nickname, King of the Diviner, Daniel 5:31. Throne name, Artaxerxes. Birth name, Bardia. Nickname, Guamata Damagas. Darius the First. Birth name, maybe Darius. Nickname, King of Kings. Xerxes. Birth name, maybe Xerxes. Nickname, King. Vashti. Birth name, perhaps Vashti. Nickname, who knows? The reference, Esther. Esther, birth name, Hadassah. Nickname, Strong Wife, Esther 2:7. Artaxerxes the First, birth name, Cyrus. Nickname, Longhand, the book of Ezra 7 and 1. And so on and so forth. Yeah? This is very interesting that, and new information for me. I didn't know that the birth name and the throne name, I didn't know that the Bible used their throne names only and not their birth names. So this is very interesting and sort of crucial information for us to get a hand on, um, to understand how, you know, propagandist historians, right, working for the beast, try to distort information and sort of obscure truth, right, by saying, well, you know, the Bible, um, is recording falsehoods, right, when the whole basis of the Hebrew lifestyle is truth, because we follow the God of truth, we hold up truth. The battle is for truth to come forward, not lies, right? And if you really think about it, there is only the the most prolific liars on this planet are the European kings. You know, they do their best to mask all truth and to give you their version of history, which time and time again whistleblowers prove are lies. Corporations lie, governments lie, kings lie, queens lie, all in the name of what? Capitalism and democracy and maintaining power, right? So that's all I'm going to read for now. Just want to give you guys a taste of this document. I'm going to put the link for the document in the description. And if you guys want me to keep reading, like the video, subscribe, and, let me know in the comments if you want me to keep reading, and I'll keep reading this document and we can go through it together. Okay? With that, I say peace to all my brothers and sisters, the so-called Negroes who came off the slave ships, the descendants of these people, and all you sincere strangers who truly want to seek truth and truly want to seek the Most High God, except, of course, for the so-called white man who is the devil and Satan. Peace and shalom unto you. Hallelujah.